Hello and welcome to the Summerhouse sessions with Inverness Gigs, and today we are joined by international artist Pat Kearns. Welcome to Scotland.
It's a pleasure to be here. It really is.
So, I've obviously had a bit of research into you today, and you're quite dynamic within the music industry. But I was wondering if you would be able to first of all give everybody a bit of information about your music itself.
Wow.
It's quite vague, but how you feel, what sort of styles and influences, and
I really like songwriters. I like good songs. Like, my taste is all over the place. I play it, the kind of music I actually play is a very narrow band to my taste, but not really by choice. It's just that's what comes out of me. But yeah, I love all kinds of music, but what it boils down to is I really just like good songs. It's always the song that is the most important thing to me. And whether I'm producing, a hardcore record or a folk record or a rock and roll record, I'm always searching for good songs.
yeah, as a writer yourself, how do you write your songs? I myself write stories, but is that how you write, or?
A little bit. I mean, stories are a big part of it, but I always write with an acoustic guitar. That's not by choice. That's just, and that's why I think my music is, narrowed down to this type of thing. This is just the instrument that, when I have it in my hands, where it comes pouring out. When I sit down at a piano or an organ or anything else, it's not like this. This is part of me. I don't have that same. I can play the other stuff, but I don't have the same feeling about it.
Yeah. And you talked there, mentioned about recording stuff, and that is also a huge part of who you are. And back home,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a studio. So what kind of people do you like to work with in that setting?
Good songs again. That's my favorite thing. I'm lucky that people who also like good songs tend to seek me out.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably most of the people I work with where our minds meet.
Yeah.
Is just looking at songs, and people have different ways of doing it. Some people, it is the electric guitar, and that's their thing. Some people, it's the violin, or it's different for everybody, and I'm more interested in working with people different than me than the same, because that's more exciting to me, because it's something that I can't do or put my finger on.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. I was wondering if you would be able to play us a song.
Yeah. I'm going to play you a song that is kind of it's an autobiographical song about me and my wife Susan, and it's also about us leaving Portland, Oregon and moving to the desert, and it also concerns my love affair with music. It's like a love affair with anything, true love or whatever. It's not always on and positive, and so there's bits in the song about me being unsure about music, and in the end I come to terms with, music makes me feel pretty good. So this one's called Low Wind Howlin'. She was just a girl from Philly who never seen the stars. Those were her words, not mine. adventure brought her out west. I'm so happy she's by my side, and there's a low wind howling, blowing us down the road. All these songs in my head, I try to write them down. Seemed a worthwhile way to pass my time. Now I see the writing, plain there but small. I wish I had identified that there's a low wind howling, blowing us down the road. We're selling our possessions, trying to save our souls. There's gotta be more to this life. After all these years, all I really know is that music makes me feel alright. And there's a low wind howling, blowing us down the road. Sometimes all you really need is a lazy country melody. Now the cranes are coming, the bobcats arrived. Are we building heaven or just doing time? I've got my girl from Philly, we're doing alright. When the sun goes down, she sees those stars shine. And there's a low wind howling, blowing us down the road. Sometimes all we really need is a lazy country melody.
That was a lovely tune. It was absolutely fantastic. I was reading, having a look a wee bit into your album, Down Wash Out.
No, Down in the Wash.
Down in the Wash.
Yeah, but let me explain it.
Yes, that would be great, yeah.
Yeah, nobody over here knows what washes are, for good reason. They're a thing that is in the desert, you know, and there's not many deserts in Scotland that I'm aware of. What happens in the desert, there's no rivers, there's no lakes, there's a lack of water. It's a desert, but when it does rain, the water runs off the land really quick and it's got to go somewhere, and it goes into these gullies. And the gullies are called washes. And when they're dry, that's the place with like the coyotes and the road runners. That cartoon plays out in real life on our land. And mountain lions and bobcats and the tortoises and just all the wildlife. The quail use the wash as like a highway. It's a really good thoroughfare to get from one part of the desert to the other.
So what were your influences in the album? What was your drive for it?
It was my first solo album was called So Long City, and that album was about the time that we were splitting between Portland, Oregon and Joshua Tree, California, and the road trips in between, the driving. This album I started working on after we'd moved full time to the desert, and so it really is the desert was the biggest influence on the album, and it's very quiet out where we live. There's a lot of space, and so the music reflects that. It's very quiet and there's a lot of space, and then there's little things. I find that melodies of the desert have snuck into the album and stuff. There's the sound of owls and coyotes and things that have creeped into the melodies, and so I mean, you know, of course, a lot of great songwriters too were an influence on me, but I really think on this particular album, the desert was the biggest influence.
Yeah, it's a huge impact, especially when you've moved to somewhere that's so stark compared to...
Yeah, I lived in a place that, you know, was more like Scotland than where I live my entire life, Portland, Oregon. And it rains there the whole time, and you know, if we were going to make a change, I tend to be somebody that when I make a change, it's very drastic. So there you go.
Yeah. And I was having a look in your website as well about Blue Sky Black Heart. Is that a band that you're with as well?
That was my old band, Blue Skies for Black Hearts, and we were a power pop band, which was we were influenced as much by, I feel like, Big Star and the Beatles as by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, so it's been a project that you've moved on from since then, or is it still an ongoing project?
It's a project that I've moved on from because I went through a change, and it was a drastic change. When I wrote songs for that band, I wrote them for a band, and so things were, the way the songs worked out, I liked girl groups a lot, like 60s girl groups, so I liked that call and response vocal thing, and I love it when you have a solo section, just a musical break in a song, but there's not like somebody taking a, you know, real hot lead and stepping out. And this is what I love about the Heartbreakers is you got Mike Campbell and Ben Tench creating one beautiful sound together, and nobody's really doing a solo, and that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. So the songs were built that way, and then as the band was dissolving and I was changing, starting to play solo shows, it was very difficult to play any of those songs because of the way that they were built, and so I had to. It was a challenge. I had to kind of relearn how to think about music and write, because it wasn't that I didn't want to play with groups. I wanted to be able to play with groups, but I also wanted to be able to just play by myself and have the songs stand on their own, which the Blue Skies songs couldn't really function that way very well. And so, I started just picking out the obvious influences, somebody like Bob Dylan, who is constantly changing the situation. And, how does he get this song to work? In all these situations, and kind of started using those mechanisms to create things instead of a whole bunch of parts coming together.
Yeah, some folks, when they come from a band and then onto a solo thing, do you find that can almost feel like a lonely place on stage, or is it just sort of entice you to work sort of harder?
Both. It definitely was lonely, especially in the beginning. I'm really comfortable with it now. I really like it, but it's way more difficult to be by yourself than with a band, and that took a little while, quite a while, like a few years to get used to being up by myself and having to, nobody to cover when you forgot something or that kind of thing. And it's more difficult, I found, or at least for me, to write a song that can stand with just you playing it than with the whole band.
Yeah. There we go. So would you like to play us another tune?
Yeah. I'll play you the one that I think has a lot of desert sounds in it. Let me find all the tools in here. There's one. A bag of magic. I might pull a rabbit out of here later.
I use a mustard tin.
A what?
A mustard tin.
You use a mustard tin?
Yeah, a dry powder mustard tin, and that's what I use for all my bits and pieces. I've got a wee one for the plectrum and then a bigger one for all the other bits and pieces. But there's nothing worse than getting somewhere and you're raking through the bottom of a rucksack for all these wee bits.
Yeah, yeah. This is a song called Mojave Moonlight. We live in the Mojave Desert, and the thing about the moonlight in the desert is that it's as bright as the noonday sun. You can read a book by it, you can see everything. The biggest difference is that instead of it being sunlight, the entire desert is bathed in this beautiful blue color when the moon is out. And in this song, it's July and it's extremely hot. It's like 44, 45 degrees Celsius during the day, and you can't, if your car breaks down and the roads are lonely, we live way out, and so nobody may drive by that road to help you out if you broke down. And you can't walk anywhere in the midday sun because after about a half hour or an hour, it will dry you out and you'll just turn into dust and blow away. But at night, it cools down enough, or at least you don't have the sun beating down on you like that. It still remains really hot, but you can walk around, and that's something that we do a lot. Is in the thick of summer, we take nighttime walks, and in this particular song, the people realize after the sun has gone down that they can walk home, and they do, and they spend time walking through a wash, and they make their way through a dry lake, which is exactly what it is. We have these lake beds that when it rains they fill up with water, and in a day or two the water all boils away. It's gone. It's just a flat, salt-laden area. And here we go. We're not so far from home. Let's walk by the light of the moon, out to the west. At last the sun sets. We haven't seen a soul since high noon today. 109, and it ain't cooling down tonight, and our car ain't running away. We're not so far from home. Let's walk by the light of the moon, side of the road. We leave our car with a note and set out under Mojave moonlight. I sing you a song, you're singing along, and you're dancing. Forgetting my troubles, I'm feeling alright. We're not so far from home. Let's walk by the light of the moon. Wind in our ears, sounds like whispers. There's a dry lake. We start making our way across in the heat of the night. This late in July, we were wild, like coyotes down in the wash.
It's another lovely wee tune, that one. Definitely imagine the animals running about the wash in your tune there. So, as being an international artist, what other parts of your tour are you doing? Is it just Scotland at the moment that you're?
We did some gigs in southern England, Bath, London, and Southampton, and then on Tuesday we start heading home, and by Friday we pick up on the west coast there and do a week with the full band.
Right.
Over there, and then I go to work at this Pickathon festival, which is a lot like Belladrum, for a week after that, and then we get to finally go home to the desert. So
It sounds like we almost need to do a swap that we'll take a turn and go across to see the Pickathon.
I would love that.
Yeah,
I would love that. I think you guys would love that festival, and it's just, man, it sounds like you guys also have something really special up here. I'd like to see that as well. But I'm really happy to have a job there. I record and mix the main stage for broadcast every year. Yeah. And it's just, it's a job. It's really, I'm ready when it's over. I'm ready to go home. Yeah. I'm ready to be out of there, but I look forward to it every year.
Do you have artists that you look forward to seeing at this year? Is there anybody that you're...
Yeah, I've got Phil Lesh on my stage from the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And I believe I also have Neurosis on my stage, and that gives you a good idea of like the breadth of the things I like.
Yeah.
So
it's quite a diverse range.
Yeah.
And part of you being on tour, is there any standout gigs that you have in your mind of the years of doing tours that you think that gig just touched, like piece of my heart, or that's one gig that I will never...
Ones that I played or attended?
Played. Yeah.
Man, a whole bunch of these, honestly. I've gotten to meet so many cool people while I was over here. I got to meet Mikey and Stevie from the Carloways.
Yeah.
And I was a fan of their music before I came over, so that was just... we played the Cypress Inn in Bridge of Erne, and it was like not really a show. There was a big table in this room, and we all sat around this table, and people piled into the room and sat around the edges and everything.
Yeah.
And we just passed guitars around all night and shared songs and played, and that was one of the just best experiences I've ever had in my life. And we all played on each other's songs, even though, like, you know, we'd never done that before.
Yeah,
that was amazing. So that one really stuck out.
Yeah, for most folk up here, that sort of what you would, if it's in somebody's home, would be like a traditional house ceilidh before the ceilidhs became the big dances that they are, and where like your musicians sit in a circle and everybody takes a turn, a song or a poem or.
Yeah, what did you call that one more time? A house?
Ceilidh.
Ceilidh?
Ceilidh, that was what they originally were. But a ceilidh now in Scotland usually is a big dance, and it's all traditional Scottish tunes, and you'll dance to reels and stuff like that.
I think we may try to co-opt that name because we have a thing in America called hoots, hootenannies, and it's sort of similar, but this was different. Now hootenanny, like, everybody takes a turn, and once you've done your turn, you're done, you know,
Yeah.
and you go on. But this house ceilidh thing, it sounds like you just keep going around.
Yeah.
And that was a tradition. We were so impressed with what happened at the Cypress Inn that we were thinking about taking that back to our little pub in the desert, Landers Brew,
Yeah.
and starting that thing up.
There's another one that's similar, and they call it a songwriter's circle. So you meet as a songwriter's circle, and you can then go and sit with other songwriters. And it's not necessarily about everybody else. It's about the person. And a lot of people, musicians, will use it as a chance to hear new music and just sort of get a feel for what it is out
Yeah.
and about. So.
Yeah, we do that sometimes. We don't do. We had this group of songwriters in the desert that we named the Coyote Gulch Messengers, because we would meet at this cabin over in Coyote Gulch that Rags Rosenberg of Rags and Bones used to inhabit. And that was like, you know, we didn't have an audience. It would just always be 4 or 5 songwriters, and you show everybody your newest stuff, and everybody, like, give you feedback when you're done. Like, you need to work on that second line of the second verse. There's always this guy Paul Cullum there, and Paul, he's the most astute of everybody. He always had the best, like, things. Like, he'd pick stuff like that out. It's like, yeah, that second line's not right.
It's sometimes nice to have these things, but then other times you don't really want to hear it, do you?
Sometimes. In that environment, it was safe,
Yeah.
you know, and so it was really nice. And those guys, I really respect those guys. They, you know, those are some top-notch songwriters. So.
Yeah. I don't think we've actually touched on the fact that you do something quite similar, that you call it the solar cabin sessions.
Yeah.
And it's quite like what we do here.
It's
but
a lot
part
like
of your studio that you run.
Yeah. We came up with the idea, Susan and I came up with it because we're building a larger studio out in the desert. It's been a 5-year project so far. And after we lost my studio in Portland, Oregon due to gentrification, we sold our house. So gentrification both worked for and against us. We're able to make some money off selling our house because property values had skyrocketed due to gentrification. And we moved to the desert and started this project of building a larger solar-powered facility down there. And the cabin, which is also solar-powered, was both my test run of the larger facility, but also where we were in this interim period where I would be working. And coming into things, like the studio should be finished, and probably open by the end of the year. We wanted to tell the story to everybody of, like, you know, that the big studio just didn't appear out of, you know, nowhere and was there, that this was something to go along. And I'd been telling people that, yeah, you know, we live in this little cabin and all this and everything, but the best way to really explain something to people is for them to see it with their own eyes. And it's hard for people to come out and visit us, but we could do video, and I could have my songwriter friends come over and do something really similar where I interview them for a few minutes and then they play one song. And in the cabin, you get to see the cabin and the neighborhood that we live in, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And will it be something that you'll keep on the wee solar sessions as a separate entity from your big studio, or
No, we have me and the filmmaker, who's named Joshua James Huff, who I'm doing this with. We've done what we consider season 1 is finished, which is just going to be the cabin. And we did 9 episodes for that, and I believe we're about next week, episode 7 will come out. Once we get through those 9 episodes, by the time we come around to film in season 2, the larger studio will be open. And so the title of the series may or may not change. I don't know if we'll keep it Solar Cabin or we'll just keep the cabin in the background. But the concept's going to stay the same, where we have people come over and we interview them and film them doing a song. I think when we get over to the larger studio, I have a feeling that the whole idea may expand. Like the interview might get longer, we might do back and forth like how you do, or we might have them do more than one song. But the biggest advantage of the bigger place is that if we want, we can have full bands. We have more room, more sonic ability to deal with things than we do in the little cabin. There's not enough room right now to put a drum set, the recording gear, and a camera. Yeah. So drums are out.
Cool. Would you be able to play as your final song for this session?
Yeah. Let me think really quick what I'm gonna play. Let's do the title track from my first solo record. This is called So Long City, and it was kind of what happened to us in realizing that it wasn't like, bam, I knew I needed to leave Portland, like something happened and it was gone. It was like a whole bunch of small things happened, and we came to a realization that we were going to have to move. And one of the things that happened early on is that we lived in this neighborhood. I lived in this neighborhood for over 20 years in southeast Portland, right around Southeast Division Street. And Susan and I like to do this thing that we called urban hiking, which we put a backpack on like we were going to go to the woods for the day with, some waters and some, granola bars and things like that. And instead of going into the woods, we just headed out the front door of the house and walk around our favorite parts of the city and hit all our favorite little pubs and grab little bites to eat and spend all day out and do about 10 miles.
That sounds quite good. It's quite a positive way to look on living in city life, that where you...
Urban hikes were one of my favorite things to do when we lived there. It was just, you could be gone all day. It was really fun. You'd come home just like you'd hiked in the woods, refreshed.
Yeah.
You'd have beautiful experiences, out there in the city. But one day, just right after we left the house, we were walking along Division Street, and Susan and I went into this little shop, one of the new shops along Division Street, and they were selling a bunch of things that you don't need. These little glass baubles with air plants in them that hung from like dental floss from the ceiling. And you ever seen the Black Flag bars? The punk band Black Flag?
Yeah. And
they like to sell this shirt in Portland that's Cat Flag, and it's 4 black cats that look, they're laid out like the bars of Black Flag. They had that in there. And I'm not a big shopper in that way. I get bored really quick in those stores. Put me in a record store, that's a different deal, or a guitar shop. But so I walked out of the store back onto Division Street, and I had a little bit of a panic attack because I was, we were only a few blocks from the house I'd lived in for over 20 years, and I didn't recognize anything. I wasn't sure which direction the river was or the volcano, and I looked to the left, and all I saw, like all the old familiar buildings were gone, and there were just these big glass cubes up, and I looked to the right, and it was the same thing. I didn't know if I was on the north side of the street or the south side of the street, or east or west for that matter. Other than Division Street, I was like, oh, I know it's And I had this panic attack, and it just bothered me for days afterwards, possibly weeks. And songs for me, like, when I'm bothered about something, oftentimes, most of the time, a song eventually pops out that is me trying to make sense of the situation. And when this song came out of me that day, and I was writing it at our little table by our front door, even when I was and it took me a few hours to write it and put everything together, but even when I was halfway done, it was like everything started to make sense, and I knew even because the chorus was one of the first things to come, and I was like, wow, I was like, we're leaving, and it was both emotional, but also I was liberated. You know, I never could imagine myself leaving the town that I was born and raised in up till that moment, and that was big. This is So Long City. Our goodbyes several years ago at the wake we held for our town. That's what I call that night, hopping bars before they tore Division Street to the ground. So long, city, I bid you goodbye. So long, city, tears in my eyes. You can't keep on building, but you can never make or fake new old friends. And I can relate chasing a rat, but that chase, it never ends. So long, city, I bid you goodbye. So long, city, I realize nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever stays the same. I'm out of the race. I won't participate in my own doing it. You can't stop the change. You can only ride the wave. You sent me packing. So long, city, so long, city, I realize nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever stays the same.
very much. There's something very familiar about your music. It's something that you do. You know, it feels like it's just sort of part of what I know. You know, it's been lovely to have you here today. It's thanks for coming.
Thank you. That's a big compliment, Mark. Thank you for having us. This is really nice playing in the summer house here.
Yeah, I always say to everybody, it's a privilege for me, because essentially I'm getting a private gig in my own house, you know. So it's always been something quite humbling, and I always find that when folk are playing as well, you know when you're enjoying music, when secretly you notice yourself smiling, and it just creeps up in you, and you're not aware of it, and then you're like, oh, I'm smiling. So thanks so much. It was a lovely session. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you.